All right, welcome into First and Pod. Our Super Bowl matchup for Super Bowl 59 is now set. It's a rematch from a couple of years ago, the Chiefs and the Eagles. We just wrapped up Conference Championship Sunday, and I'm here to talk about it. First and Pod, we react to every game every week, and it's the Eagles 55-23 over the Commanders. The Chiefs, again, 32-29, topping the Bills late in that game. Andrew Fillipponi, Pat isn't here. Spencer Ray producing. We're going to get into all the angles of these games. I start every episode by letting you guys know it's really simple. If you want regular football talk, guys breaking down ball without going over your head, without making it too complicated, doing it in very digestible episodes, things you can do while you're driving into work or on your lunch break or when you have spare time, this is the show for you. Subscribe, rate, review. Subscription is huge. You subscribe, the podcast get dropped right in your feed, and you can do it on any platform, including the Odyssey app where we're based. Okay, so I always believe you start big picture and then you get into the details and the minutia of things as the conversation goes along. So let's go with the biggest picture take from the Bills beating the Chiefs. I see, Freudian slip. I wanted the Bills to win the game. That's what just happened there. You are finding me on it at a time where I'm a little bit down in the dumps here. There's an alcoholic beverage to my left because I've been dealing with and coping with and numbing the pain of dealing with the Chiefs going to another Super Bowl. And yes, I'm a hater. I have no problem admitting that. Oh, you're supposed to be objective and unbiased when you're breaking down games. No, I tell you who I root for. I tell you the teams I like, the players I don't. That's what this is. I'm a fan, so I've got opinions that way. I'm not seeing everything straight down the middle. The refs don't either, apparently, when the Chiefs play, by the way. So, yeah, I wanted Buffalo to win. I have friends and family. I was at the game last weekend. You guys know that, the Bills and Ravens game. I wanted to see those fans, and I wanted to see that team and Josh Allen in the Super Bowl for the first time since 1992 and finally get over the hump. So I am in a pissy mood over it. I also have been pretty good friends, borderline best friends with Nick Wright for 20 years. So I know that I'm going to have to deal with a landslide of shit from him, whether it's direct to this right here, my phone from him, or watching him on FS1 or just dealing with group texts and things like that and seeing him on social media for the next few days. So that also puts me in a crappy mood, right? But the big picture thing is that we just watched history. We just saw something that we've never seen before. The Chiefs become the first team after winning 2 Super Bowls to make it back to a third in a row. The Patriots have gone to 3 straight Super Bowls, but never in sequence where they had won 2 and then went the following year. The last team that was in this position to go to a Super Bowl after winning 2 in a row was Dallas in 94, and they got waxed by the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. This is not supposed to happen. It's a league of parity in theory. It's a league where the salary cap and the way the draft is structured is to try to create situations like we saw with Washington, where a team goes from 4 wins last year all the way to the NFC Championship. It's not supposed to be this easy to have repeated success over and over again. And Kansas City has done it because it's the perfect combination of coach and quarterback. It's supposed to be the ultimate team game. It's not. It's about the coach and the quarterback. And yeah, the defense in Kansas City with Spagnuolo there and Chris Jones has been really good and at times has carried Kansas City. And last year in the AFC Championship game, when they scored that opening drive touchdown, they then needed Baltimore gaffes and big defensive plays to win. In this AFC Championship game tonight, it was about the Chiefs' offense delivering in a way it hasn't all year. This is a season high in points for Kansas City. They never broke more than 30 points. They did it against a team that forced 3 turnovers against Baltimore last week and forced 1 in this game, and the Bills won the turnover battle again. Buffalo never lost the turnover battle all year. They either were even or they won it in every single game. They were plus 24 going into the playoffs, the best in the league. And that trend continued, and they still lost with an extra possession that they scored a touchdown on. And it's a testament. It pains me to say it, but it's a testament to what Patrick Mahomes has done there and what Andy Reid has done there. These two working in perfect harmony since Mahomes became the starter in 2017. They didn't punt until the second half of this game. The Bills had chances, including late, to make stops and give Josh Allen a chance. And I guess technically they did. They bent, but they didn't break on that fourth quarter possession where Phillips had the sack. Then on third down, they got pressure and Mahomes had to throw the ball away, and they kicked a field goal, 32-29. So Buffalo did have, I think, not what Bills fans would have signed up for. I don't think Bills fans would have signed up for down 3 with 3 minutes and change left, and the ball is in Josh Allen's hands. I talked to Bills fans. My uncle's one. I was at the game last week. I worked in Buffalo at WGR, the flagship station, which is a great place, great station, powerhouse station. It's a great town. I still have many connections there. Bills fans were very, very optimistic about this game. Many of which thought they were going to win, I guess idiotically now in retrospect, thought they were going to win this game semi-convincingly. And I listened to the conversation there this week. They didn't think it was going to come down to Josh Allen with the ball trailing in the fourth quarter. But that being said, you believe or you count on, you trust Josh Allen to come through in those moments. And the sad thing about it is, Josh Allen, I don't think, is going to ultimately look like the bad guy or the loser in this. Again, it's the thing about this game that is so crazy, I guess, is that in a way it was predictable. You know, the Occam's razor, which I don't know why I'm trying to use philosophical terms here that maybe people don't understand. The Occam's razor analysis of this game was basically Mahomes teams win in January and the Bills don't. And Josh Allen can play a good game, but Patrick Mahomes is going to play a better game. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. And then you've got people like me that keep rooting for and picking the Chiefs to lose these games, and they don't. And it's this tug of war that goes on between your heart and your head in these games, and you try to come up with rational, logical reasons for why the Chiefs are going to lose. And some of them do exist. I mean, Buffalo had pretty much run the ball on everybody, including Baltimore last week, where the Ravens gave up a season high in rushing yards. Allen had played mistake-free football. McDermott defensively made adjustments against Baltimore in a chess match to limit them in the first half and then hold on in the second half. And the Chiefs, I should say, week after week, game after game, would win 15-2, but not do it in a way that made me feel like this was truly a dynastic or special team. And it happened again. I mean, this game actually, offensively from the Chiefs, the way that Mahomes was able to engineer victory without utilizing Kelsey. Kelsey was invisible in this game the same way he was in the first Bills matchup. But it started with the opening drive. I mean, they went right downfield, and he spread the ball around to Worthy, and Hollywood Brown made his first real impact on a big game as a Kansas City Chief. And Kareem Hunt scored a touchdown. And then on the last friggin' drive of the game, it's Samaje Perine, who wasn't involved at all, makes the catch to seal it. And that really is the Chiefs in a nutshell. That really was the Patriots, if you think about it, during their dynasty runs. The common thread, of course, was Belichick and Brady, and they'd work in these guys who were cast-offs or were shown the door by other teams, and they would step in and they would make big plays. And so Perine got caught by an arch-rival Denver, and he seals the game. And Worthy makes big plays, and the thing that is going to be sickening for Bills fans, and I can already hear that conversation Monday, all day Monday there, is they had a chance to draft him. They traded the pick to Kansas City. It, like many Bills fans predicted, that draft night was going to come back to bite them, handing an explosive player to your arch rival. And he had 6 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown. It's like worst fears realized for Bills fans. And the big picture thing for them out of this game has to be the snake-bitten, cursed feeling that this franchise has endured forever. They won AFL titles. Very few people are around to remember those. It was in a different league, in a different era, in a different time. Everything else is about coming up short in big games. 88 AFC Championship game against Cincinnati, Super Bowl 20, 21, 22, 23. Only one of those games being close, the Norwood miss. The other 3 games being blowout losses. America getting sick and tired of seeing the Bills because they became synonymous with losing big games. The long drought that went on where they had the longest run of missing the playoffs that started with the Music City Miracle because they lost that game on that crazy throwback play from Frank Wycheck to Kevin Dyson that got the Titans a win and then ended up lifting them all the way to the Super Bowl. And then we didn't see him in the playoffs again for like 20 years. And now they get this quarterback, Josh Allen, who's the second coming of Jim Kelly. And there's a barrier again. It's not the Super Bowl. It's not getting to the big game and losing. It's getting through Kansas City. And they're 0-4 against them now. And there's a few things about this game from their perspective that are going to get second-guessed immensely big time. Maybe one that won't that much, but will by me, is before, we'll get to the 4th down play in a second. Before the 4th down play happens with Allen, again, making a superhero, like 1% play where there's only a handful of guys in NFL history that make that throw with falling away with pressure right on the money in that moment. I mean, I'm not even sure Mahomes probably does actually, but Tom Brady can't make that throw, in my opinion. Mobility, not anywhere close to Allen. Arm strength, not as good as Allen. Okay. I would have loved to have actually had him on this game to analyze that call actually, but the plays leading up to that 4th down heave, that last ditch effort, they start the drive, and I know Allen ended up running for a 1st down. The drive started with a handoff, I think, to Ty Johnson. Now, you've run the ball pretty well in the second half of the game. The drive that started the Bills' comeback was a drive where they pretty much ran the ball the entire time to set up a touchdown. And the clock at that point, you want to make sure that you're either going to kick a field goal to send the game into overtime and give Kansas City no time left to beat you in regulation, like the 13-second debacle from a few years ago, or you're going to score a touchdown, go up, and at that point, Kansas City, good luck trying to tie the game or win the game, however it works when you get the ball back with just a few seconds left. So I understand that. You want to stick to your offense. But it's not James Cook. That's the part of it I didn't understand. There were a few times in this game where there were critical plays, and the guy that made another Herculean play on 4th down where he keeps his knee off the ground and extends the ball over the goal line, where he's not out there. And I get it. He's not your best pass-catching running back. So you're starting the drive with a 3rd down back out there because he's a good extra pass protector and can help out against the blitz or whatever and can catch the ball in the backfield. But if the whole point is we're going to be true to ourselves here and run our offense business as usual because it's not a race against the clock, why is that guy not in the game? He's not incapable of catching the ball. So I didn't like that just from he's set your single season record for rushing touchdowns, tying OJ friggin' Simpson, and he wasn't out there. I didn't like that. And then their third, so then the play right before the heave to Kincaid is a wide receiver screen to Amari Cooper on 3rd and 10. Cooper's barely been involved in their offense. I made a couple of catches in this game. He's also not the kind of guy who can catch a wide receiver screen and, like Xavier Worthy could for Kansas City, break a tackle and then look like he was shot out of a cannon and take it and run it 25, 30 yards. He's not that kind of wide receiver. So I don't like a designed quick out play when it's 3rd down. I'd rather put the ball in Allen's hands and let him scan the field quickly, go through his reads. If it's not there, take off and run it himself like he did for the 1st down before that. So Joe Brady was up for head coaching jobs, didn't get any, took himself out of the New Orleans Saints job search. I did not think he did a very good job there. And the plays that led up to the last play for Buffalo, and the ball's Kincaid's got to catch it, period. It's hard concentration focus-wise because it's a broken play and there's bodies in front of you and stuff, but the ball hits him in the hands. And that's going to be a play that lives in infamy that people are going to think about and remember for a very, very, very long time in Buffalo. The other thing that I'll say about the Bills as far as coming up short here, actually, I've got a couple more things here. Their defense, again, in big moments, shrinks. And even though I gave them credit for what they did in the first half against Baltimore, really the last 6 quarters of their season, the second half against the Ravens, they didn't stop the Ravens. Mark Andrews dropped the football, right? They didn't get a stop. They allowed for Baltimore to go downfield, and then their all-time leading touchdown receptions leader dropped the 2-point conversion right in his hands. So they got a lucky break there. And then in this game, they really didn't stop Kansas City. And I know Benford went out early in the game, their top corner, and they had to deal with Elam, who stinks. What a horrible first-round pick that guy was. Kansas City's game plan basically was wherever that guy is, let's attack him for most of the game. So that's a savvy move. That's like Tom Brady would do that. Here's the weakest link. Let's go at him over and over and over again until they make some kind of schematic change or just take the guy out of the game and bench him. But they couldn't because they were short on corners. So I give, I'm not going to, though, give Buffalo a free pass there. You've got a defensive head coach in McDermott. You still have guys like Ed Oliver, Milano played. Really, I get it. The sum is greater than the parts with the Bills defense. They don't have the elite players that they did a few years ago. You gave up the most points Kansas City scored all year. And so Sean McDermott, I think, is going to have to do more soul searching and really think about that this offseason. Yet again, why does my defense routinely in playoff games, the games we lose, why is it that I look at that unit, which is my bread and butter, and it's the side of the ball that's dragging us down? And then there's this. One of the critical plays in this game when it's all said and done, and I thought about it at the time, and it ended up being a blessing in disguise for Kansas City. Jumping offside on an extra point ended up completely changing this game. Because Buffalo, I think rightly, accepted the penalty, took the point off the board, and went for 2. And they went with the tush-push play. Allen got stopped. He tried to lateral it back. The ball, Kansas City recovered it, but they didn't do anything with it. That play, that decision, set into motion 3 things that happened that give us the final score of 32-29. The Bills don't get that 2-point conversion. That takes a point off the board. They chase the point later in the game They fail on the 2-point conversion again. That's 2 points. And then the Chiefs went for 2 and got it. There's 3. That's your game. And so there might be a show tomorrow that you listen to, or another NFL podcast that you like, or somebody else on Twitter or X will say, Sean McDermott blew it. I'm not blaming him for taking the point off the board and going for 2. I'm more blaming the execution. Twice in the game, that first 2-point try, and then the 4th down play where they got stopped. I put stopped in air quotes, and that's going to be my final salvo on this game in a second. Twice they went to that tush push in big moments. It didn't work. I'm more blaming the execution. Sometimes I think it's okay as a fan or as an analyst or as a talking head like me to not bury a coach, but more assign blame or responsibility to the players for the plays not working. And on the 2-point plays, I mean, I think that was the right call. They went 0 for 3 in those situations, though. You know, I cover a team, the Steelers, who can't win a big game to save their lives. So I'm not saying that they're supposed to be the guiding light or shining example here. But the Steelers, at every training camp that I've ever covered, they do a thing called 7 shots, which is 7 plays, offense versus defense, that simulates 2-point conversions to basically end practice. And so it's ingrained in them, 2-point defense, 2-point offense. It's a staple of what they do. And I don't have the stats pulled up on how they do in those situations, but all I'm saying is that, you know, it's such a huge part of that team's identity or DNA. You know, the idea is you should stop them 50% of the time and you should make them 50% of the time. And they went 0 for 3 on those coin flips. And ultimately, that's the game right there, 32-29. If I wanted to, I could have started with that and said, this is really what the game is all about, those decisions and then the way the plays were executed. And then the last thing on the game is this. And I could have started with it. I could have made this the entire conversation. I kind of sound like a baby and a sour grapes guy and somebody that is just going to like latch on to the lowest hanging fruit and trying to cast the biggest net and appeal to the lowest common denominator. So, you know, I'm not above that, by the way. I don't know. When we started this, it did not feel like it was the number one thing that I wanted to just, you know, pour out of me and talk about. The Chiefs do get the 50-50 calls and massive officiating breaks, and it happened again in this game. The play where Worthy and Bishop are wrestling for the ball right before the end of the first half, and they rule it a catch on the field. That way it couldn't get overturned on replay, right? So the ball, you see it. I'm not saying it should have been an interception, by the way. You see the ball on the ground. It doesn't look like either guy has possession. Brown's hand is not underneath, or Worthy's hand is not underneath the ball. You see the ball on the ground. And I get it. I get this part of it. Blakeman says, well, basically inconclusive. We got to stick with the call on the field. But they gave the Chiefs the benefit of the doubt on that play. That was the problem. The problem is that in those situations, it's like the instinct of the referee is to award the ball or award the play to Kansas City because they just assume that they made the play. The 4th down stop, I said this earlier in air quotes, with Allen, where they ruled him short on that sneak play. You saw one official run in, and it looked like he was lining up to spot the ball for a first down, and the other was running in to line it up short. What I didn't understand here on that play, thanks, Spence, like the Hail Mary, exactly. What I didn't understand about that play was I've heard coaches say this and they're right. And I've heard people in the officiating business say this too. These situations where it's a spot the ball call, those are the hardest ones in football to overturn. Like where the ball should be spotted, especially when there's a lot of bodies, those are the most difficult things to get overturned on replay. But it's easier when we're talking about a physical yard line where it's like the 40-yard line and it spans the entire field. And that's what you had on that play. And that was one on replay where, frankly, I thought the defense of, well, it's inconclusive, didn't pass like the muster there. Gene Steratore, who, by the way, like lives within 5 minutes from where I am right now, and I'm not saying that I value his opinion. I want to value his opinion more because we're basically neighbors, in air quotes. But we know that he is very loath, for the most part, to criticize referees. That has become, I think, one of the worst jobs in sports broadcasting, because the NFL gets pissed when the network rules analyst disagrees with the officiating on the field. Because when they do, it makes the NFL look bad. It makes people question the decision. And especially with the Chiefs, it makes people question the motive of the decision. And it brings in conspiracy theories and things like that. So when Steratore says, yeah, that should have been a first down, I thought he had the yard line to gain by, I think he said like a half a yard line or something like that, a half a yard or a third of a yard. He gave a measurement. That just feeds into my lizard brain theory that the NFL wants the Chiefs to win. And even if it's subconscious, even if the referees are trying to fight it or pretend like it's not there, in moments like this, especially when it's not a bang thing and they actually have a chance to look at it on replay, I feel like it seeps in and affects what happens in these games. Ultimately, I'm not going to come on this podcast and say the Bills got robbed. I'm not. However, I do think when grading out the officiating in this game again, the Chiefs got the bigger calls or the more questionable calls in their favor. And I used to be, when I say used to, I'm talking about when I was 6 or 7 years old. I liked pro wrestling when I was that young, and I'm actually surrounded by adults my age at work who like it now, which is crazy. And the thing is, it used to be when I was a kid, if a guy had the belt, you had to pin him. You couldn't beat him with disqualification. He'd keep the belt, count out, keep the belt. That's what it feels like with the Chiefs, that you're going to have to beat them so clearly and obviously that if it's even close, things are going to conspire against you, like the officiating, to help get them over the top. So I think I've gotten everything out of my system on this game. I'm not pleased that the Chiefs are back in the Super Bowl and we're going to have to deal with 2 weeks of, if they win, are they the greatest team of all time? Is this the greatest dynasty in NFL history? How close is Patrick Mahomes to passing Tom Brady? Is Andy Reid in the conversation now with Belichick for Coach of the Year? I will do all those things probably on this show. I will have great enthusiasm and energy for those topics, but I would much prefer to be talking about the Bills trying to win their first Super Bowl and the way that would resonate with their fans and what it would mean to the NFL and Josh Allen's legacy moving forward. And that actually is the last thing I'll say about this. Allen's got to win one. He's got to get over the hump. He's probably not going to win the MVP. He's probably, because that's going to go to Allen. That's going to go to Jackson just based on how the AP MVP voting went. He's not been to a Super Bowl. So in that respect, he's kind of like, no, very different styles of play. But that's kind of like a Phillip Rivers resume where there's no Super Bowl appearances in there and there's no MVPs. I think Allen is better than Rivers. But as far as when you compare the team success and the lack of individual awards, that's really like there's not like a huge group of guys who you would say are Hall of Famers who fit into that category. I think Warren Moon would probably be another one. Played for a long time in the Hall of Fame, never went to Super Bowl. So, I mean, that's not, I mean, it's still Hall of Fame worthy, but it's clearly down the list of all-time quarterbacks because they don't have the all-time great individual season and they don't have the team success. And I actually feel bad for Allen because the final numbers in this game are not blow you away. 237 for 2 touchdowns, but I thought he played well enough to win. The throws to Hollins were amazing. Were just the ones down the middle were just incredible. And they're going to have to get him, I think, more weapons this offseason. Some people like to think that Allen flourished this year and came out of his shell because he didn't have Diggs there, but they very clearly need some guys to go with him in that offense because I thought Kincaid underachieved this year, not just with this drop in this game. Coleman didn't have the kind of rookie season that people thought, and Cooper did not have the kind of impact on the team that I thought he would when he came over from the Browns at the trade deadline. All right, so that's the AFC Championship game. I kind of filibustered on that and went long, but it was obviously even beforehand the more compelling matchup and the better game, and it lived up to the hype, even though, in my opinion, the wrong team won. The bad guys won the game. The Eagles and Commanders. Big picture on that. Start with this. Saquon Barkley is trying to dispel the notion or the myth that this is a quarterback-driven league. The Chiefs are in the Super Bowl again because even though Mahomes doesn't win the MVP every year and doesn't put up the best stats, they have the best quarterback in the NFL, and they already have conservatively, a top 5 quarterback of all time. The Eagles are doing it differently. They've constructed from top to bottom, I believe, the best roster in the entire NFL. They do have a good quarterback, but he's not great. More on Jalen Hurts in a second. What they do have that has taken them from collapse and playoff flame out a season ago to where they are right now, scoring 55 points in an NFC Championship game and becoming the first team since the 1940s to have 7 rushing touchdowns in a playoff game. The reason why they're here and they're doing this is because of Saquon Barkley. And it gets repetitive and redundant with him the same way that it does with Mahomes in these playoff games. You know, it's our job to come up with superlatives and these very unique and, that's why I'm here. Like anybody can just regurgitate stats and read you box scores and give you that kind of thing. How do you as a talk show host find a entertaining and kind of one-of-a-kind way to talk about things? What Saquon Barkley is doing is basically something that was reserved for like the 1990s, I would say, and before that, as far as the way the NFL works today versus the way it did when I'm in my late 30s, when my dad was my age, which was you didn't necessarily, more often than not, you needed a good quarterback, but you didn't necessarily need to have an all-time great one. If you had a great running back, that would, now Barry Sanders, sorry, Lions fans, an exception to that, but the Cowboys, Aikman's in the Hall of Fame, but Emmitt Smith was the best player. The run game was the best part of that dynasty run. Denver, John Elway was late in his career. Terrell Davis was their best player. And that's the last time we've seen a team that was really built on the back of a running back in his prime who was the best at what he did go this far in the postseason. In fact, I think the last first-team All-Pro running back to get to a Super Bowl, to win a Super Bowl, was Marshall Faulk with the Rams in 99, I think. Or maybe it was the Rams in 01, the last time a first-team All-Pro even got to a Super Bowl when they didn't win. So it is now 25 years ago. That's a bygone era. And so Barkley is I mean, just the first touch of the game. I mean, it looked like it was going to be a decent gain, and there was one or two missed tackles, and then boom, he's gone. And they've had running backs that were decent that flourished because the offensive line there is so excellent. And then when you add in the dual threat part of it with Hurts, it keeps defenses honest because they don't know if they should isolate on the running back or the quarterback. They also have the receivers there in Brown and Smith where, like, if you sell out to stop the run, those guys can make big plays too. I mean, that's an 11-man offense. I get it that the Chiefs have an all-pro center and all-pro offensive lineman in Poni, and they've got the mastermind, mad scientist, Andy Reid running the thing, but it's really all about Mahomes. If you take Mahomes out and put any quarterback in there, they'd still be good because of Reid, but they wouldn't be what they are in these big games, which is capable of scoring 30-plus points. The Eagles' offense it's a puzzle. All these pieces fit together wonderfully. But the one that brought it all together this year was Barkley. And we see him on the sideline. He's dealing with calf stuff. Honestly, it looked like in this game that they were pacing him. I mean, I think I looked at the first half stats and I was like, are you kidding me? Saquon Barkley's only got 7 carries in this game. And at that point, Washington was still kind of hanging around. The guy, I think, is less than 100%, or at least managing something, and he's still able to put up these crazy numbers. Washington showed that they were here a year early. It reminded me as a Steelers fan of when the Steelers had a much better regular season than Washington this year, but in 2004 and Roethlisberger's first year, it's relevant. I'm not just going off Steelers history. It's relevant because it was another rookie quarterback. In 2004, they went 15-1 with Ben in there, and then they got to the playoffs, and by the time they played New England in the AFC Championship game, it was obvious that even though they had a great record, it was not their time. There was a pick 6 by Roethlisberger, 87 yards by Rodney Harrison. Brady was, starting to come into his zone, not just as a game manager, but as a future all-time great, best to ever do it. And it was like, okay, like this team was ahead of schedule. They were not expected to win 15 games and go to the AFC Championship game. Same thing with Washington. I mean, Washington really, if you think about it, they've got Daniels, McLaurin. Their best offensive lineman missed the game, Cosme, with a torn ACL. They've got Luvu and Wagner at inside linebacker. I'd say Payne is really good at defensive tackle. Allen was a top pick, but is not the guy he used to be. Armstrong, the defensive end, actually played really well in the playoffs, and Payne missed the game. That's right. That's right, Spence. And I think it was the first game he missed in like 5 years. And Lattimore's a big name, but we saw him act like a complete jackass in this game. It's not a good. There might be 15 teams in the NFL that are better on paper than them. They got this far because their quarterback played out of his mind, played absolutely out of his skull. I would say you saw a lot of that, like, equanimity and like composure in big moments from Burrow when they went to the Super Bowl as a worst to first team and went through Kansas City and went to Buffalo in the snow and won. Like, I saw those traits in Daniels, but like on steroids. And he didn't have Jamar Chase to throw the ball to. And that Cincinnati defense actually came through in more moments than this Washington defense did. So I think ultimately Daniels gets betrayed. The McNichols fumble on a kickoff return, the Eckler fumble later in the game, dumb penalties. The Barkley thing, people are going to put the microscope on in Washington. He was, I thought, clearly out of bounds. I know it's an impossible task sometimes from these defensive players, but I thought he was a whole foot out of bounds. He didn't look like he was trying to turn the ball and stay in, turn up field and stay in bounds. It looked like because he was hurt, like I said, trying to live to play the next down and be smart about it. So I thought that was stupid. Washington was not ready. I thought it made sense in the moment, but in retrospect, and you never know. I mean, Philadelphia, like I said, is just so much better than Washington, man for man, player for player, position by position. It would have been interesting to me if Washington, on that 4th and 3 on the first drive, instead of kicking a field goal, if they had gone for it again, converted, and then scored a touchdown on the opening drive, I would have liked to have seen how Philadelphia responded to that, because going down 3-0, I thought felt like a win for Philly, even though Washington had the ball for 8 minutes and from a play perspective was their longest drive of the season. They ended up getting a stop. And compared to how the Lions defense did against Washington and Tampa Bay's defense, holding them to a field goal there was actually a win. If it's a touchdown in Daniels in that offense and Ertz going back into Philly, if they cash it in there, then I think it just puts a ton of pressure, and that there's tension in the stadium if that happens. And there's the feeling of here we go again, because Washington beat Philly the last time and Daniels had 5 touchdowns. And also in that game, Philly was +3 in turnovers and still lost. So there were self-inflicted wounds by Washington in that game too. So at the end of the day here, I think what we got in these 2 championship games is really a pretty chalky, pretty predictable run through the playoffs here. Now, I did pick Buffalo to win, so I didn't get it completely right. But the team that seems to be impossible to beat, like the Michael Myers of playoff teams, the Chiefs, are in the Super Bowl. And the best team in the NFC from 1 to 53 on the roster is in the Super Bowl too. And very rarely does it work that way in the NFL for 2 reasons: because it's single elimination any given Sunday and injuries. So in that respect, that's why it's a good matchup. It's not the most it's not the most interesting per se, because we've seen it before, but it's probably the most deserving. And these 2 teams are probably, when it's all said and done, the 2 best teams for this matchup. I will say in closing here, because I don't think it's fair to not mention this about Philly's win, Jalen Hurts played a really good game. And Jalen Hurts, I get it, Washington's defense is average and their run defense is atrocious. And they didn't have Payne on defense, as Spence pointed out, and they were not at 100%. But he was not healthy for this game going in either. He had that brace on his knee that he practiced with all week. The reports I heard from practice was that he basically looked like a 75-year-old man moving around in practice. Did not look right. Their center was hurt and then had to go in and play in the second half because Landon Dickinson got hurt, and he's obviously the Alabama center, moved to guard. He's a great player. So there were things conspiring, or there were factors in the game that could have led to Hurts having another ho-hum game. They probably did not need him to be good or great to win. They won 55-23. But that performance, I think, is huge going into the Super Bowl now, because the confidence is there. He's done it in the playoffs now. He wasn't along for the ride. He didn't ride any coattails. He got the job done, and he was really good in the Super Bowl against Kansas City 2 years ago. So I don't feel like Pat and I both agreed that Washington had the better quarterback going into this game. Jaden Daniels right now is better than Jalen Hurts. And obviously, when we do the tail of the tape on the Super Bowl, we're going to say the same thing about Mahomes and Hurts. However, this is not a situation where it's a great quarterback against some scrub or against some guy that can't get it done. Jalen Hurts is a winner, and he finds a way in these games. And when he's in a matchup where the other guy has got a big weapon, has got a big gun, he usually finds a way by hook or by crook to either keep up with the guy or outshine the guy. And he, I thought, did that in this game today. All right. So thank you for tuning in the whole way. I got through it. No Pat. We'll touch base with him as we get into not just Super Bowl preview, but also this week between the Super Bowl and the championship games will give us a chance to now get into some of the meatiness of the NFL offseason, the coaching changes that have happened, the other moves that are on the table. We'll do a lot of that on the next episode. We'll start our early discussions of the Eagles and Chiefs as well. Hey, thanks for being a big part of First and Pod. It means the world to me that you guys subscribe. It would mean even more if you could rate and review the show as well. Let us know what you think. I'm Andrew Fillipponi. For Patrick Peterson and Spencer Ray, what a great championship weekend. We'll talk again soon.